Worlds that had thrived for thousands of years were reduced to ruins. Cities that once sparkled with life now lay in silence, their streets empty, their skies choked with ash. The Kryn Dominion, a ruthless and merciless species, had swept through the stars like a tidal wave of destruction. Their warships moved with terrifying speed, their weapons leaving nothing behind. Entire civilizations were wiped from existence in a single day. It was a war no one could stop. The Galactic Council had tried. Fleets of millions united under the banner of peace and survival, launched attack after attack. But every plan failed. Every fleet was shredded. Every counter-strike met with brutal efficiency. The Kryn did not just fight, they dominated. Hope had faded long ago. Stories of worlds burning, children crying, and planets falling had become a nightmare repeated in every corner of the galaxy. On the bridge of the command station Aurora, Admiral Lether stared at the star map. Red lights flashed across systems like bleeding wounds. Each red dot marked a world lost. Each red dot carried a story of death, despair, and failure. He felt the weight of them all. Lether had once been full of pride and purpose, but now he only felt exhaustion and grief. His homeworld had fallen to the Kryn decades ago, and he had buried his family in the ashes. That pain never left him. Now he watched the same story repeat across the galaxy. "It's hopeless," murmured Commander Vale, his second-in-command, his face pale under the dim bridge lights. "Every counterattack fails. Every fleet we send is gone in hours. We are losing, fast." Lether didn't answer. He couldn't. Words were useless against this endless nightmare. He only stared at the map, hoping, against reason, that a miracle might appear. And then, unexpectedly, it did. A new signal appeared on the station's long-range sensors. At first it seemed like a glitch, but it wasn't. A single ship, unlike anything seen before, moved through space with no warp trails, no engine flares, only a strange, precise elegance. The transmission was simple, yet its tone carried a weight that froze everyone on the bridge. "We know your war is lost. We can help. Stand down your fleets and allow us to coordinate a counterstrike. Humans will lead. Your hope is not gone. Humans." Lether blinked. He had heard the old legends of humanity, a species that survived famine, plague, and war on their small, fragile world. They had fought against impossible odds and endured. But humanity against the Kryn? It sounded insane. "Are they serious?" Vale asked, his voice trembling. "I don't know," Lether admitted, "but we have nothing to lose." Weeks later, the first human fleet arrived. Not the largest, not the strongest, but unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Their ships were sleek, their weapons precise, and their strategy beyond comprehension. They didn't just fight. They outsmarted the Kryn at every step. Fleets that were thought invincible were destroyed with surgical precision. Worlds written off as lost were liberated in a matter of days. For the first time in decades, hope returned. The humans were not just soldiers. They were a force of nature, a storm that reshaped the battlefield. Every alien admiral watching them felt it. The sheer, unshakable confidence, the brilliance of strategy, and the unwavering courage. It was almost painful, this hope, because it had been absent for so long. Admiral Lether stood silently on the bridge, watching as humans issued commands that synchronized fleets across light years, coordinating strikes that no one else had dared to attempt. He felt tears prick his eyes. The galaxy, long drowned in despair, was finally fighting back. But he knew the Kryn would not surrender easily. They were relentless, and they would strike back harder than ever. The war that no one could stop was not over. It was only beginning. And now, with humans leading the charge, the rules had changed forever. For the first time in generations, the galaxy dared to hope. The Kryn were confident. Their fleets, massive and merciless, patrolled every sector, convinced that no force in the galaxy could challenge them. Entire alien civilizations had already fallen, their soldiers crushed, their leaders either dead or in hiding. It seemed that even hope itself had been eradicated. Then the humans arrived. It began with a single system, long thought lost. The humans didn't rush in with sheer firepower, they used strategy. Fleets appeared where the Kryn least expected, striking with speed and precision. They disabled the enemy's communication networks, disrupted supply lines, and outmaneuvered entire Kryn battle formations. The aliens who had watched decades of war unfold were stunned. They had never seen tactics so calculated, so bold, and so effective. Admiral Lether stood on the bridge of the Aurora, watching live feeds of the battle. The humans were smaller in number, but they moved like a single, unstoppable organism. Ships darted between Kryn warships, exploiting weaknesses no one else had noticed. Planets that were written off as destroyed began to show signs of life again, resistance movements rising under the humans' guidance. Commander Vale shook his head in disbelief. How are they doing this? We've lost billions of lives, countless ships, and these humans are turning everything around. They fight differently, Lether said quietly. They don't just rely on firepower. They adapt, they think, they inspire. He felt a strange emotion in his chest, a mixture of awe and something else he hadn't felt in decades. Hope. Real hope. In one corner of the galaxy, a Kryn dreadnought moved to crush a small human-led fleet. The Kryn commander laughed over the comms, certain of victory. But the humans didn't meet force with force. Instead, they lured the dreadnought into an ambush. Smaller ships darted around, disabling key systems, while hidden drones struck at vital engines. In minutes, the massive Kryn ship was crippled. The humans didn't gloat. They moved on to the next target, relentless and focused. On a liberated planet, the alien inhabitants gathered to watch the humans in action. Children clung to their parents, soldiers wept openly, and elders whispered stories of hope returning. For the first time, they believed that the Kryn could be beaten. One old scientist who had worked in hiding for decades turned to the humans and said, "I thought the galaxy was lost. But you show us that we still have a future." The humans didn't just fight battles, they taught. Alien fleets learned to coordinate, to plan, to think differently. Every victory, small or large, became a lesson for those who had long given up. The humans were not only soldiers, they were teachers, leaders, and a symbol of resilience. Yet the Kryn noticed the change. Rage burned in their hearts as they realized that their dominance was no longer absolute. Systems they thought secure were under attack. Entire fleets were annihilated. Their soldiers whispered of a strange species that fought unlike any other, a species fearless in the face of overwhelming odds. Admiral Lether watched as the humans issued their next command. Prepare for coordinated strikes across 3 sectors. The Kryn will not expect this. We fight for every world they took from us. His voice carried calm authority, yet it sent shivers through the alien officers listening. They followed the humans' lead because they had no other choice, and because they now believed. As the first wave of strikes began, the Kryn warships fell one by one, caught in maneuvers they could not anticipate. Lether felt a lump in his throat. Ships he had once believed lost forever were alive, moving under human guidance. Planets that had seen endless death now sparked with resistance, their people rising to reclaim their homes. The humans had done what no one else could. They had changed the tide of the war. The galaxy, once drowning in despair, now saw the first glimmers of victory, and for the first time in decades, the stars themselves seemed to shine brighter, as if responding to a hope reborn. But Lether knew the Kryn would not surrender easily. They would fight harder, strike faster, and adapt to this new threat. The war was far from over. Yet as he watched the humans move with confidence and purpose, he allowed himself a rare smile. The game had changed, and the humans were winning. Word of human victory spread faster than light. Planets that had surrendered to the Kryn decades ago whispered in hidden corridors and secret bunkers. Humans were fighting back, and winning. The old despair that had paralyzed civilizations was breaking. Alien leaders who had once cowered in fear now reached out to humans for guidance and support. Admiral Lether stood in the council chambers as representatives from hundreds of species gathered. Some were skeptical, still haunted by past betrayals. Others arrived with cautious hope, carrying stories of entire populations saved by human tactics. They all looked at the humans with a mixture of awe and fear. The humans did not demand loyalty. They offered partnership. They shared knowledge, strategies, and the courage to fight. Alien fleets were reorganized, their old commanders trained in human methods. Ships moved faster, strikes became sharper, and defenses grew stronger. The Kryn, who had relied on fear and overwhelming force, suddenly faced a galaxy united in resistance. Commander Vale watched the human admirals from a corner of the chamber. They're teaching them? Training them? And the aliens are actually following? He whispered. They're inspiring them, Lether replied. That's what humans do. They don't just fight. They make others believe they can fight too. The first coordinated strike of the newly allied fleets was unlike anything the Kryn had seen. Thousands of ships from dozens of species moved as one under human direction. Every movement was calculated. Every strike had a perp. First, the Kryn fleets that had once seemed invincible were destroyed systematically. Systems once considered lost were liberated. The alien populations cheered as human-led squads landed on their worlds, working with locals to rebuild defenses, restore cities, and inspire hope. On a once-burned planet, a young alien soldier watched the humans train his people. He had lost his family to the Kryn and anger had hardened his heart. But seeing the humans fight, teaching his people tactics and courage softened that anger. They care, he whispered to a comrade. They fight not just to win, but to save us. Humans did not stop at military victories. They rebuilt, encouraged diplomacy, and coordinated resources across hundreds of liberated systems. Worlds once fractured and hopeless began to unite. Trade routes reopened, food supplies reached starving planets. Education and science programs were restarted under human guidance. The humans fought with more than weapons, they fought with vision. But the Kryn were aware of the change. Rage burned through their ranks as their dominance slipped. Fleets that had roamed unchallenged for decades now faced ambushes, sabotage, and resistance movements coordinated by humans. The Kryn adapted, but each adjustment only led to more human ingenuity. Every counterattack failed. Every plan crumbled. Admiral Lether observed the humans calmly coordinating across multiple systems. Their focus was unwavering, their resolve unshakable. Even when a Kryn super battalion appeared unexpectedly in a liberated sector, the humans adapted instantly. Ships maneuvered, drones deployed, and strategy shifted in real time. The Kryn fleet, despite its size and experience, was routed. Victory after victory, humans continued to defy expectation. Yet Lether knew the war was far from over. The Kryn were relentless, and their rage would only grow. Every human triumph invited a harsher response, and the battles ahead would be fiercer than anything the galaxy had seen. Still, the change was undeniable. The galaxy was no longer alone. It had a leader, a spark, and the will to fight back. That night, Lether walked alone on the observation deck of the Aurora, staring at the stars. He saw planets glowing faintly in the distance, worlds he had long mourned as lost. Now, under the humans' guidance, they were alive again. He allowed himself a rare moment of hope. For the first time in generations, the galaxy was not just surviving. It was fighting back. And it all began with humans. The Kryn would come. They would strike harder. They would test every world, every fleet, every alliance. But now the galaxy was awake. And with humans leading, no one would fight alone. The game was no longer just survival. It was a war for the soul of the galaxy, moved as one. Hope burned brighter than the Kryn ever imagined. But the Kryn were not finished. In a distant sector, a massive Kryn fleet gathered, larger than any before. Thousands of warships bristled with weapons, their engines glowing red with fury. The Kryn High Commander, a towering figure of cold logic and hatred, surveyed the holographic map. "These humans and their allies think they can stop us," he hissed. "They are insects before a hammer. Strike and leave nothing alive." The humans were aware. Reports from scouts showed the incoming fleet was unlike anything they had faced. The council held emergency meetings, alien leaders fearful and uncertain. The humans, however, moved with calm authority. "We expected this," said Admiral Rhea, one of the human commanders. Her voice was steady, her eyes bright with determination. "This is the moment we prove ourselves, and the galaxy proves it can fight." Admiral Lether watched as the humans prepared. They did not panic. They did not retreat. Fleets moved into formation, drones deployed, and planetary defenses synchronized. The aliens followed their lead, trusting in strategies they barely understood, hoping against hope that humans knew what they were doing. The first attack came without warning. Kryn capital ships fired their massive energy cannons, reducing the outer human fleet to sparks and fire. Explosions rippled across space like storms of molten light. Alien allies watched in horror as ships they had trusted for decades were torn apart in minutes. Yet humans did not falter. Smaller, faster ships weaved through the blasts, disabling key Kryn engines and weapons. Hidden drones sabotaged enemy ships from within. Human tacticians anticipated every move, countering the Kryn before they even realized it. They did not rely on brute force, they relied on intelligence, speed, and coordination. The battle raged for hours. Entire sectors lit up like fireworks, with ships exploding in brilliant bursts. Alien admirals gasped at the humans' daring maneuvers, their fleets surviving and countering attacks that would have destroyed any other force. Each human victory sparked cheers among the liberated planets, yet there was also fear. Every success came at a cost. Brave alien crews fell and human ships were lost as well. In the middle of the chaos, Admiral Rhea directed a daring maneuver. Human ships split into smaller units, drawing the Kryn fleet into a trap near a binary star system. The enemy pursued, confident in their numbers. Then the humans struck from multiple angles, cutting off Kryn escape routes. Massive cruisers were disabled, and the once unstoppable Kryn fleet began to fracture. On the observation deck of the Aurora, Lether felt a surge of emotion. He had seen fleets destroyed. He had seen planets burn, but he had never seen courage like this. Humans fought with more than strategy. They fought with heart, with the weight of countless generations who had survived impossible odds on a fragile world. The tide turned. The Kryn, stunned by the humans' ingenuity, retreated in confusion. Ships that had been feared for decades were crippled. The surviving Kryn forces withdrew to rethink their plan, but the victory was bittersweet. Many ships were lost, and brave alien soldiers died to hold the line. The humans mourned alongside their allies, honoring every life lost. Yet even in sorrow there was a spark of joy. The galaxy had survived its first true test against the Kryn. Admiral Lether turned to Commander Vale, tears in his eyes. They did it! Against impossible odds. They did it, Vale nodded, his voice shaking. Human, they've changed everything. They've given the galaxy a future. Above all, the humans remained humble. They treated victory not as glory, but as responsibility. Every world saved, every fleet rebuilt, every life honored. They carried the burden of the galaxy's hope on their shoulders. The Kryn would return. They would strike harder, faster, with more fury than ever. But now the galaxy had learned something critical. There was a force even the Kryn could not break. The humans had led the way, showing the galaxy how to fight and how to win. For the first time in generations, the galaxy did not tremble in fear. It stood ready, and the humans were at its heart. The Kryn had never faced anything like this. Their fleets, once unstoppable, were now fractured. Systems that had once bowed in submission rose in defiance. The humans and their allies moved with speed and precision, striking where the Kryn least expected, liberating planet after planet. Admiral Lether watched from the bridge of the Aurora as reports streamed in. Entire sectors once lost were now free. Alien populations cheered from the skies and streets, waving flags and sending messages of thanks to humans who had saved them. Children who had never seen hope now smiled. Adults who had long mourned their homes now rebuilt them. The galaxy was waking. Commander Vale shook his head in disbelief. They've done what we thought impossible. Systems that were gone, they're alive again. It's unreal. Lether allowed himself a rare smile. Not unreal, he said quietly. Human. The humans moved swiftly, not wasting time. Their fleet struck deep into Kryn-occupied territory, cutting off supply lines and liberating prisoners. They coordinated attacks so perfectly that the Kryn had no time to regroup. Each human-led strike carried a lesson. Precision over power, strategy over fear, hope over despair. On a liberated world, the alien inhabitants celebrated as human soldiers helped rebuild their cities. Children ran through streets once filled with smoke and rubble. The humans taught them to repair machinery, defend their homes, and work together. Elder leaders who had lost decades of progress to war wept openly at the return of life and order. In space, the Kryn struggled to respond. Their commanders grew frantic, trying to anticipate human moves only to find themselves outmaneuvered at every turn. Entire fleets were ambushed, destroyed, or forced to retreat. The Kryn High Commander clenched his fists, fury burning through him. He had believed no force could oppose his dominion. Now he realized that he was facing a species unlike any he had ever encountered. Admiral Rhea, the human commander, addressed the Allied fleets through communication channels. We fight not for ourselves alone. We fight for every world that has been taken, for every life lost, every home destroyed. We fight so the galaxy can survive, and we will not stop until the Kryn are defeated. Her voice carried through space like a rallying cry, filling even the most weary aliens with renewed courage. The first coordinated liberation of a major Kryn stronghold was underway. Thousands of ships moved in perfect synchronization. Human drones disabled planetary defenses while Allied fleets engaged the enemy head-on. Planets that had been silent for decades now buzzed with resistance movements, guided by human strategy. Every citizen who had once hidden from the Kryn now fought, reclaiming their homes with hope and determination. Admiral Lether watched as the battle unfolded. He felt a surge of pride and amazement. Humans had not only taught the galaxy to fight, they had reminded it how to hope. Entire civilizations were rising from despair, reclaiming their worlds and standing together for the first time in generations. Yet the cost was not forgotten. Ships were lost. Brave soldiers sacrificed themselves to hold key positions, and the humans mourned alongside their allies. But even in grief, their resolve did not falter. Every loss became motivation. Every victory inspired more courage. Every liberated world proved that the Kryn's reign was not eternal. As the battle reached its climax, the Kryn forces were scattered, their command structure in chaos. The humans pressed forward, striking with precision and heart, ensuring that every victory was complete. Lether felt tears in his eyes, not of sorrow but of overwhelming relief. The galaxy was alive again. The Kryn would not give up. They would strike back harder than ever. But now the galaxy had tasted freedom. The humans had shown them the way. Entire worlds, once paralyzed by fear, now stood united. The tide had turned. For the first time, the galaxy knew that it could fight. And it could win. The Kryn were furious. Their pride, shattered by the humans, burned like a wildfire. Systems they once ruled without question were lost. Fleets that had once been unstoppable were scattered. And their soldiers whispered fearfully of the strange species that had changed the rules of war. High Commander Varn, the Kryn leader, paced in his command hall aboard the flagship Oblivion. His claws scraped across the floor as he bellowed orders. "Enough! Every system they have touched must burn! We will crush them, all of them, and show the galaxy that no species can defy us." Across liberated sectors, humans and alien allies sensed the storm approaching. Intelligence reports warned of massive Kryn fleets moving faster and more aggressively than ever before. Entire regions prepared for the retaliation, while humans coordinated defensive lines across multiple systems. They did not panic. They did not waver. They adapted. Admiral Lether stood on the Aurora's bridge, watching the incoming enemy formations on the holomap. His heart pounded with a mix of fear and anticipation. This was the test they had been preparing for, the Kryn's full fury. Yet even as dread tightened in his chest, he felt something he hadn't felt in decades: confidence. The humans were ready. Admiral Rhea addressed the fleets through the comms. "We expected this. The Kryn will come with everything they have. But we have something they do not: unity, strategy, and hope. We will hold. We will fight. And we will survive together." Her words rang across thousands of ships, reaching alien ears that had long forgotten courage. The battle began without warning. Kryn warships unleashed torrents of energy, tearing through the outer defensive lines. Explosions flared across space, and screams echoed through the comms as ships fell. Yet humans moved with precision. Smaller attack units darted between enemy fire, disabling weapons and engines, while larger human cruisers struck critical points in the Kryn formations. Alien commanders, once doubtful, followed human orders with unwavering trust. They adapted to new tactics, coordinated with other species, and fought with renewed vigor. Even worlds previously paralyzed by fear now launched resistance movements, sabotaging Kryn supply lines and striking at occupied cities. In one critical sector, a human fleet faced the brunt of the Kryn assault. Their numbers were smaller, yet their coordination and ingenuity shone. Drones infiltrated Kryn ships, disabling engines and weapons. Ambushes struck with perfect timing. Every move was calculated, every action intentional. And yet there was courage beyond strategy, a fierce determination to protect every life they could. On the ground, liberated planets trembled as Kryn strikes attempted to reclaim territory. But humans led counteroffensives with alien forces, reclaiming cities, defending civilians, and turning potential defeat into victory. Children watched human soldiers fight and lead, their eyes wide with awe. Elders wept as they saw humanity stand firm in the face of overwhelming odds. Hours turned into days, and the Kryn began to falter. Their massive fleets, though powerful, were unprepared for the humans' combination of intelligence, adaptability, and resolve. Even the High Commander's rage could not compensate for the brilliance of human tactics. Admiral Lether observed the battlefield, awe and pride mingling in his heart. "They fight not just to win," he said softly to Commander Vale, "but to save the galaxy. They carry hope in every maneuver, every decision, every life they protect." The humans were relentless. Every attack met with counter-strategy. Every world threatened became a bastion of defense. And slowly the Kryn retreated, not entirely defeated but shaken to their core. They had never faced a species like humans. They had never known a force driven not by conquest but by courage, hope, and the will to survive. As the fleets regrouped, the galaxy breathed a collective sigh of relief. Humans had turned back the most powerful strike the Kryn had ever launched. But the battle had a price. Lives were lost, cities were scarred, and the war had only grown more dangerous. Yet even in sorrow, the galaxy knew something powerful. Humans were different. They would not surrender. They would not break. And they would not stop until the Kryn were finally defeated. For the first time, the galaxy truly believed victory was possible. The Kryn had grown desperate. Their fleets were scattered, their command shattered, and their soldiers demoralized. Yet they would not surrender. They sent everything they had left into a final, all-consuming strike, determined to crush the humans and reclaim the galaxy. Admiral Lether watched the approaching armada from the bridge of the Aurora. He felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. Every species, every life, every hope in the galaxy rested on what the humans would do next. He had seen them fight through impossible odds before, but this, the final battle, was their ultimate test. Admiral Rhea spoke over the comms, her voice steady and resolute. "This is it. We fight not for glory, not for conquest, but for survival. Every life we save, every world we protect, is a victory in itself. Trust in your fleets, trust in each other, trust in humanity." The humans led the charge with precision and courage. Fleets of allies and liberated species moved under human direction. Like a single living organism, every maneuver was calculated, every strike deliberate. Kryn warships met resistance they had never faced before. Ambushes, traps, and tactics designed for decades of war struck with unexpected brilliance. In the midst of battle, Lether saw human fighters weave through enemy fire, their small ships outmaneuvering massive Kryn cruisers. They struck at engines and weapons, then disappeared into the darkness, leaving confusion and panic behind. Entire Kryn divisions were immobilized before they could retaliate. On liberated planets, civilians watched the skies filled with the war above them. Children clutched parents' hands, whispering prayers, while elders cried tears of relief. The humans were not just soldiers. They were saviors, symbols of courage and hope that touched every heart. The battle raged for days. Ships fell, explosions lit the void, and brave souls sacrificed themselves for the greater good. Yet the humans never wavered. They adapted, learned, and pressed forward. Every loss was honored, every victory inspired, every action reminded the galaxy why humans had survived a fragile, war-torn planet for centuries. They refused to give up. In a daring final maneuver, human fleets split into multiple assault groups, striking the Kryn flagship and supply line simultaneously. The High Commander of the Kryn, furious and panicked, could not coordinate a defense. His massive warships were systematically disabled. His soldiers, once fearless, fled or surrendered. Lether felt a lump in his throat as he watched the flagship explode in brilliant, blinding light. The Kryn's command was broken. Their fleet scattered. The galaxy had won. But it was not humans alone who had claimed victory. Their courage had united countless species, showing them that even the darkest times could be overcome. The war was over, yet its impact would last forever. Worlds that had been scorched were rebuilt. Children who had never known peace laughed in the streets. Alien civilizations, once fractured and fearful, now stood together, and humanity, small in numbers yet enormous in heart, became a beacon of hope across the stars. Admiral Rhea addressed the galaxy over the comms. "The Kryn tried to take everything from us. They sought to break us, to extinguish life itself, but they underestimated what it means to fight for hope, for unity, for survival. We are not conquerors. We are guardians, and together we have changed the galaxy forever." On the observation deck of the Aurora, Lether looked out at the stars. They were no longer symbols of fear and despair. They were reminders of resilience, courage, and hope. Humans had shown the galaxy that strength was not measured by power alone, but by heart, intelligence, and unity. For generations, the stars would carry the memory of this war. The Kryn would never again threaten the galaxy with impunity. And every civilization, no matter how small, would know that when humanity arrived, the game was changed forever. Lether allowed himself a smile, one he had not worn in decades. The war that no one could stop had been stopped, not by fleets of millions, not by sheer force, but by humans. The galaxy was alive, free, and it owed its future to the species that refused to surrender.